At the family dinner, my brother said, "You'll never succeed without us." I quietly opened my own company. The words hung in the air, thick and cloying as the scent of port wine and beeswax. They were not shouted. Marcus had delivered them with the casual, smiling cruelty he had perfected over a lifetime of being the favored son. They landed on the polished mahogany table between the silver gravy boat and my mother's untouched creme brulee, a conversational grenade lobbed with surgical precision. The dining room of the Vance estate was a mausoleum of good taste, a testament to 4 generations of building a furniture empire on the unshakable foundation of tradition. Heavy damask curtains, the color of dried blood, swallowed the last of the evening light. Portraits of my ancestors, stern, whiskered men who looked as unyielding as the oak they had once felled, stared down at us with painted disapproval. Every Sunday, we gathered here to perform the ritual of being a family, a play in which everyone knew their lines except, it seemed, for me. "It's not about abandoning tradition, Marcus," I said, my voice carefully measured. I refused to let it shake. I kept my hands laced in my lap, my knuckles white. "It's about evolving. The market is changing. People, our age, younger, they don't want a dining set that will outlive their grandchildren. They want something smart, sustainable, modular. Something that can move with them from a first apartment to a first home." I had spent 6 months developing the proposal. My portfolio, currently sitting in a leather satchel by my chair, was filled with sketches, material sourcing data for reclaimed timber and recycled metals, and a complete business plan for a direct-to-consumer e-commerce platform. It was my heart and soul bound in calfskin. I called it the Ether line, light, adaptable, modern. Everything Vance Sons was not. My father, William Vance, dabbed his lips with a linen napkin. He was a man carved from the same timber as his furniture, solid, expensive, and utterly inflexible. "Alara, we have built a legacy on permanence. A Vance piece is an investment. It is a cornerstone of a home. We do not sell flat-pack fads." The disdain in his voice could have stripped varnish. "It's not a fad, Dad. It's the future," I insisted, a little more heat creeping into my tone than I'd intended. "It's about responsible design, a smaller footprint. It's a story people want to be a part of." "The only story we tell is one of quality," Marcus interjected, swirling the dark red liquid in his glass. He was 2 years my senior, with our father's sharp jaw and an air of entitlement so profound it was practically a physical presence. As the designated heir, he had treated the company as his birthright, a kingdom he would one day inherit, not a business he needed to understand or nurture. "We're not in the business of selling stories to renters. We're in the business of selling heirlooms to people who matter." The unspoken addendum, "and you, little sister, are not one of them," was clear. I had worked in the design department at Vance Sons for 5 years since graduating top of my class. I was talented, I was diligent, and I was consistently, systematically, ignored. My ideas were either dismissed as too radical or quietly absorbed into Marcus's own proposals, the credit stripped away like bark from a log. "The people who matter, as you so charmingly put it, are a shrinking demographic," I countered, my gaze fixed on him. "Their children are our future customers, and they care about the things I'm talking about." Marcus let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a sound I'd known my whole life, the sound of dismissal, of a door slamming shut in my face. He leaned forward, placing his elbows on the sacred mahogany. He looked around the table, at our father's stony face and our mother's placid, practiced neutrality, gathering them as his audience. That's when he said it. "Alara, Alara, Alara," he began, his voice dripping with mock pity. "You live in a fantasy world. You have this artistic temperament. It's cute, but it's not business. You've had a comfortable life, a good job that we gave you, a place to test out your little hobbies." He gestured around the room, at the empire of wood and wealth. "This is the real world. This is what success looks like. And the truth is, you'll never succeed without us." Silence. Not a heavy, uncomfortable silence, but a light, affirming one. My father nodded almost imperceptibly. My mother, Catherine, offered a weak, tight-lipped smile that was meant to be placating but felt like a betrayal. They agreed. In their eyes, I was not a partner or a potential leader. I was a charity case, a delicate accessory to the family legacy, and my ambition was an embarrassing inconvenience. Something inside me, a fragile wire I had been carefully protecting for years, finally snapped. The hurt was a white-hot flash, so intense it almost took my breath away. But in its wake, it left something else. Not sadness, not anger, but a profound and chilling clarity. The heat cooled and hardened into something sharp and strong, like steel quenched in ice water. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply looked at my brother, at the smug certainty in his eyes, and I made a decision. He thought he was delivering an ending, a final verdict on my worth. He had no idea he was giving me a beginning. I gave a small, tight-lipped nod. You might be right, I said, my voice eerily calm. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur. I don't remember what else was said. I remember the weight of the silverware in my hands, the clink of glass against my teeth, the feeling of being a ghost at my own family table. The bond I'd thought was strained, I now realized, was entirely severed. They hadn't just dismissed my idea, they had dismissed me. And as my father droned on about a new contract with a golf club in Connecticut, and Marcus preened about his brilliant cost-cutting measures, which involved replacing seasoned artisans with cheaper, less skilled labor, a single, powerful sentence began to form in my mind, a silent vow that echoed louder than their voices. I will prove you wrong. The second I closed the door of my small city apartment behind me, the suffocating atmosphere of the Vance estate fell away. Here, the air was my own. It smelled of turpentine, coffee, and old books, not potpourri and entitlement. The contrast was dizzying. I leaned against the door, my leather satchel sliding to the floor with a heavy thud. For a long moment, I just breathed. In and out. My reflection in the hallway mirror showed a pale, serious woman with dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. My eyes, usually bright with ideas, were shadowed with a hurt so deep it felt ancient. But beneath the hurt, a new light was beginning to glimmer. A pilot light. Marcus's words played on a loop. You'll never succeed without us. It was meant as a curse, a chain to keep me in my place. But he'd made a critical mistake. He'd assumed I wanted his definition of success, a seat at that oppressive mahogany table, a life spent seeking the approval of men who would never grant it. He didn't understand that my definition of success was freedom. And he had just handed me the key to my own cage. I walked over to my drafting table, which took up a third of my living room. Pinned to the wall above it were fabric swatches, wood samples, and preliminary sketches of the ether line. My dream, tacked to a plasterboard wall. I looked at it, truly looked at it, and saw it not as a failed proposal, but as a declaration of independence. My hands moved with a purpose I hadn't felt all evening. I unbuckled the satchel and pulled out the portfolio. I didn't open it. I knew its contents by heart. Instead, I went to my laptop, the sleek, modern device a stark contrast to the heavy, antique-filled world I'd just left. The screen flared to life, illuminating my determined face. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. There was a tremor in them, not of fear, but of adrenaline. This was it. The point of no return. I opened a web browser. The search bar blinked, waiting. Register a business name. I typed the words and hit enter. A government website, stark and bureaucratic, filled the screen. Step 1, choose a name. I had toyed with dozens of names over the years, filing them away in a notebook, but tonight, only one felt right. It came to me instantly, a perfect summation of what I wanted to build. Aura Designs. Not about the object itself, but the feeling it created. Not about permanence, but about presence. Personal. Individual. Everything Vance Sons was not. I typed it into the search field. Name available. A small thrill shot through me. I filled out the forms with methodical precision. My name. My address. My company. The words felt electric. For a fee of $150, Aura Designs became a legal entity. It was real. A tiny, digital seed planted in the dead of night. Next, the bank. I logged into my personal account. For years, I had been diligently saving. A significant portion of every paycheck from Vance Sons, the money I'd earned despite their condescension, was funneled into a high-yield savings account. I'd told myself it was for a down payment on a house, but I knew, deep down, it was my escape fund. It wasn't a fortune by Vance standards, but to me, it was everything. It was the price of my freedom. With a click, I created a new business account. Another click, and I transferred every penny of my savings into it. The number on the screen, my life's net worth, dwindled to almost zero in one column and appeared, monumental and terrifying, in another. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. There was no safety net now. The final act of the night was the most cathartic. I cleared the floor of my living room, pushing back the worn Persian rug. I opened the portfolio and laid out every single page, every sketch, every projection, every material sample. The ether line spread across my floorboards like a map to a new world. The clean lines of the modular sofa, the ingenious interlocking joinery of the shelving units that required no tools, the warm, sustainable glow of the bamboo pendant lights. It was brilliant. I knew it was. It wasn't arrogance, it was a quiet, unshakable fact I had been forced to doubt for years. Staring down at it, I wasn't the dismissed daughter or the patronized little sister anymore. I was a founder. A CEO. I finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of the evening. The sting of my brother's words. The cold disappointment of my father's silence. A single tear traced a hot path down my cheek, then another. But they weren't tears of self-pity. They were tears of release, of rage being transmuted into fuel. They fell onto a sketch of a simple, elegant side table, a design I was particularly proud of. He didn't break me. He forged me. The next few weeks were a blur of clandestine activity, a masterclass in living a double life. By day, I was Alara Vance, the quiet, overqualified designer at Vance Sons. I arrived on time. I completed my assigned tasks, minor modifications to existing, archaic designs. I kept my head down, my expression neutral. I was a ghost in my own life, saving all my energy, all my passion, for the night. The moment I got home, I became the CEO of Aura Designs. My small apartment transformed into a bustling, if silent, headquarters. My dining table was now the finance department, covered in spreadsheets and budget projections. My living room floor was RD. My bedroom was marketing, where I spent hours studying social media strategies, building a mock-up of my future website, and researching digital advertising. I slept 4 hours a night, fueled by lukewarm coffee and a burning, righteous fury. My first call was to Anya Sharma, my best friend from design school. Anya had wisely sidestepped the corporate world and had thrown her considerable intellect into the volatile, exhilarating world of tech startups. She was now a project manager for a successful e-commerce platform. Aura Designs, she said, her voice crackling over the phone. I could picture her, perched on her desk in a chaotic open-plan office in a different time zone. I like it. It's clean. Aspirational. So, you finally did it. You're breaking out of the gilded cage. I didn't have a choice, and they basically pushed me out the window. I just decided to build a parachute on the way down. I explained the scene at the dinner, recounting Marcus's words verbatim. Anya let out a low whistle. Wow. He's a piece of work. Okay, so revenge is a great motivator, but it doesn't pay the bills. What's your plan? You have the designs, which I know are killer, but what about production? Supply chain? You can't build a furniture company out of your apartment. That's my next step, I said, looking at a name I had scribbled on a notepad. I need a craftsman. A real one. And I think I know who to ask. Leo Kozar was a living legend at the Vance Sons workshop, a relic from a bygone era. He was in his late 60s, with hands as gnarled and strong as oak roots and eyes that had forgotten more about wood joinery than Marcus would ever know. He had been hired by my grandfather, the original William Vance, a man who had been a visionary and a true artist. Leo was one of the last remaining links to that time, before my father and brother began prioritizing profit margins over craftsmanship. I knew Marcus drove Leo insane. He was constantly trying to force Leo to cut corners, to use cheaper materials, to speed up processes that couldn't be sped up. Their arguments were whispered about in the workshop, Leo's booming, accented voice defending the integrity of the wood against Marcus's clipped, dismissive tone. Finding him was easy. He ignored the company-mandated retirement age and kept his own hours, often staying late in his personal corner of the massive workshop, a space that felt more like a luthier's studio than a factory floor. The air there smelled of cedar, linseed oil, and patience. I went there one evening after everyone else had gone home, my portfolio clutched in my hand like a shield. The main factory floor was dark and cavernous, the silent machines like sleeping iron dinosaurs. A single pool of warm light spilled from Leo's corner. He was there, planing a piece of cherry wood by hand, the shavings curling up in fragrant, perfect spirals. He looked up as I approached, his brow furrowed in suspicion. He didn't much care for the upstairs people. "Miss Vance," he said, his voice a low rumble. He didn't stop his work. "Leo, please." "It's Alara." I took a breath. "I need to talk to you." "Off the record." He finally paused, setting the hand plane down gently. He straightened up, wiping his hands on a rag tucked into his belt. His blue eyes, clear and sharp, assessed me. "Your brother isn't with you?" "No. This has nothing to do with him. Or the company." "Not really." His expression softened slightly. He had always been kind to me in a distant sort of way, occasionally offering a quiet compliment on a design detail he knew had come from my pen and not Marcus's. He saw things. "All right," he said, gesturing with his chin to a sturdy wooden stool. "Speak." I didn't waste time. I opened my portfolio on his workbench, the clean, modern drawings a stark contrast to the traditional tools surrounding them. I explained my vision for Aura Designs. I talked about sustainability, about smart design for modern living, about creating something new and beautiful. I didn't mention the fight, the insult, the revenge. I focused on the work, the passion. I knew that was the language Leo would understand. He listened without interruption, his gaze moving slowly from one sketch to another. He picked up a detailed drawing of the interlocking joint for my shelving system, his thumb tracing the lines. He ran his calloused fingers over a sample of bamboo laminate. When I was finished, a heavy silence filled the small space, broken only by the hum of a distant ventilation fan. I held my breath. His approval, his help, was the linchpin of my entire plan. I couldn't do this without a master craftsman to bring the designs to life. Finally, he looked up from the drawings, and his eyes met mine. For the first time, I saw a flicker of something beyond weary resignation in them. It was a spark of interest. The spark of a fellow artist. "This joinery," he said, tapping the drawing. "It's clever. Strong. Your grandfather, he liked clever things. He wasn't afraid." "That's what I'm trying to bring back," I said softly. "Your brother," Leo said, his voice flat. "He came to me last week. Wanted me to find a way to use MDF core with a cheaper veneer on the heritage line. Said no one would see the inside. I told him the soul of a piece is on the inside." He shook his head, a deep-seated disgust etched on his face. "He doesn't understand. He thinks furniture is just a collection of parts. He doesn't see the life in the wood." He looked back at my designs. This has life in it." My heart soared. "Leo, I'm starting my own company. I've registered the name. I have the capital, just enough to start. But I need a builder. I need someone to help me create the prototypes, to help me build the first run. I can't pay you what you're worth, not yet. But I can offer you a partnership. A chance to build things the right way. Your way." He was quiet for another long minute, his gaze distant. I could see the internal calculation, the weighing of a lifetime of loyalty to a name against the betrayal of that name's principles. He was weighing security against integrity. Then, he looked directly at me and a slow, rare smile spread across his face, crinkling the corners of his eyes. "When do we start?" he asked. The day I quit was a Tuesday. It was gray and drizzling, the kind of day that matched the soulless beige interior of the Vance Sons corporate offices. I had spent the weekend drafting and redrafting my resignation letter, only to settle on something brutally simple. "To whom it may concern, please accept this letter as formal notification that I am resigning from my position as designer, effective in 2 weeks. I wish the company all the best in its future endeavors. Sincerely, Alara Vance." No emotion. No explanation. Just a clean, professional severing. I walked to the HR office on the 3rd floor, my heels clicking a steady, resolute rhythm on the marble floors. The building itself felt alien to me now, a monument to a past I no longer belonged to. I handed the envelope to the HR manager, a woman who looked at me with wide, confused eyes. Vance did not simply quit. I returned to my desk, packed my personal belongings into a small cardboard box, a few books, a favorite pen, a small succulent, and walked out. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. The fallout was immediate and predictable. My phone began to ring before I had even reached the parking garage. It was my mother. I let it go to voicemail. Then my father. I let that one go, too. The third call, the one I had been waiting for, was from Marcus. I answered. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he barked. No preamble, no greeting. "I'm resigning," I said calmly, starting my car. The engine purred to life. "You're what? You submitted a letter to HR? You didn't have the decency to talk to me or Dad first? After everything we've done for you?" His voice was a blend of outrage and disbelief. "There was nothing left to talk about, Marcus. You made your position, and mine, perfectly clear on Sunday." There was a sputtering on the other end of the line. "Oh, so this is about that? You're throwing a childish tantrum because your feelings got hurt? Grow up, Alara. I was trying to give you a reality check." "No, you were trying to keep me in my place," I said, my voice as cold and smooth as river stone. "And I've decided I don't like my place." I could hear him breathing, the fury radiating through the phone. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life. What are you going to do? Freelance? Make little trinkets in your apartment? You have no idea how the real world works. You've been sheltered your whole life." "I'm learning," I said. "You'll come crawling back in a month," he sneered, the confidence returning to his voice. "When your savings run out and you realize nobody cares about your little art projects. The door will be closed, Alara. Don't expect a handout from us when you fail." That was the line that sealed it. The final nail. He didn't see me as a competitor, or even as an adult. He saw me as a petulant child who needed to be taught a lesson. The condescension was so reflexive he wasn't even aware of it. "Don't worry, Marcus," I said, and for the first time, I let a hint of a smile touch my lips. "I won't." I hung up before he could respond. I blocked his number, then my father's, then my mother's. A clean break. As I drove away from the monolithic glass and steel building that bore my family name, I didn't feel regret. I didn't feel fear. I felt the exhilarating, terrifying thrill of a freefall, my parachute just beginning to unfurl. That evening, I met Leo. He had given me the address to a small, forgotten industrial park on the other side of town. He was waiting for me outside a garage unit with a faded, peeling blue door. He'd used the modest advance I'd given him to lease it for 6 months. "It's not much," he said gruffly, pulling the heavy door up with a groan of protesting metal. I stepped inside. The space was raw, concrete floors and cinder block walls. It smelled of dust and old oil. A single bare bulb hung from a cord in the center of the room, casting long, dancing shadows. It was cold and empty. And it was the most beautiful place I had ever seen. "It's perfect," I breathed. This was the womb of Aura Designs. A blank canvas. In the center of the room, covered by a heavy canvas drop cloth, was a shape. Leo walked over to it, a proud glint in his eye. "I may have gotten a head start," he said, and with a practiced flick of his wrist, he pulled the cloth away. There it was. The side table. The first design from my portfolio, the one a tear had fallen on. It was real. Brought to life from the page with a skill that was nothing short of miraculous. It was crafted from a warm, reclaimed oak, the grain flowing like liquid honey under the stark light. The legs were sleek and tapered, and the top had a subtle, beveled edge that begged to be touched. Leo had perfectly executed the complex, tool-less joint I had designed, where the legs slotted into the base with a satisfying, perfect fit. It was elegant. It was honest. It was everything I had dreamed it would be. I walked toward it slowly, as if approaching a sacred object. I ran my hand over the top surface. It was sanded so smooth it felt like silk. I could feel the life in the wood that Leo had spoken of. This wasn't just a collection of parts. It had a soul. "Leo," I whispered, my throat tight with emotion. It's perfect." He simply nodded, his arms crossed over his broad chest, watching me. He understood. This wasn't just a piece of furniture. It was a promise. It was a declaration. It was the first tangible piece of my new life, a life I was building myself, with my own hands, on my own terms. I looked around the dusty, empty workshop, at the single, perfect table standing in the pool of light. My brother had said I would never succeed without them. He thought of success in terms of boardrooms, and profit margins, and a legacy built on dominating others. Standing here, in this humble, hopeful space, I knew he was wrong. This was success. The quiet, unshakable knowledge that you were creating something true. The revenge wasn't going to be loud or explosive. It would be quiet, and methodical, and it would be built, one beautiful piece at a time. The ashes of my old life were still warm, but here, in the dim light of a rented garage, a spark had been struck. And I would fan it into a fire. 6 months felt like 6 years, each day an epic measured in sawdust and dwindling dollars. The initial exhilaration of defiance had long since evaporated, leaving behind the gritty, unglamorous residue of reality. Aura Designs was operational, a real, functioning entity, but it was clinging to life by a thread. My life had become a triptych of grueling labor. Mornings were for administration, answering the trickle of customer emails, wrestling with shipping logistics, and staring with a kind of morbid fascination as the number in my business account steadily decreased. Afternoons and evenings were spent in the workshop with Leo, the air thick with the scent of freshly cut wood and the high whine of the table saw. Nights were for marketing, a desperate, bleary-eyed scramble into the world of social media algorithms and search engine optimization. I had become a stranger to myself. The woman who once sketched designs in a quiet, climate-controlled office was gone. In her place was a creature of perpetual motion, with dark circles under her eyes that no amount of concealer could hide, and a fine, permanent layer of sawdust settled in her hair and eyebrows. My hands, once soft and manicured, were now calloused and nicked, a cartographer's map of my struggle. I lived on coffee that was more necessity than pleasure, and cheap instant noodles I ate standing over the sink in my apartment, which was no longer a home but merely a place to sleep for a few precious hours. The echo of my brother's voice was my constant, unwelcome companion. "You'll come crawling back in a month." It was month 6, and I was not crawling, but I was close to breaking. The grind was one thing, the setbacks were another. They came like a series of targeted strikes, each one aimed at my most vulnerable points. The first major blow was the wood. I had secured a deal with a supplier for a batch of reclaimed maple, harvested from a century-old barn. It was beautiful, filled with character, and perfectly aligned with the Aura Designs ethos. It was also nearly all of my remaining capital. When the shipment arrived, Leo and I opened the crates with the reverence of archaeologists unearthing a tomb. But as Leo ran his expert hand over the first plank, his face tightened. "Warped," he announced, his voice flat with disappointment. "All of it. Stored improperly. Too much moisture." We went through the entire shipment. Plank after plank was twisted, cupped, and utterly unusable for the precise, clean lines my designs demanded. I felt the blood drain from my face. It was thousands of dollars, turned into a pile of expensive, contorted firewood. I had to pay the supplier, I had signed the contract. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I sat at my drafting table, Marcus's voice a venomous whisper in my ear. "You have no idea how the real world works." Then came the review. We had sold a few pieces, mostly to friends of friends or through a small online artisan marketplace. The feedback had been glowing, small affirmations that kept me going. But one morning, a 1-star review appeared on our nascent website. It was from a customer I didn't recognize, someone who had stumbled upon us organically. The review was brutal. "Overpriced IKEA with a pretentious backstory," it began. My heart seized. "The clever joinery feels flimsy and the finish is uneven. Save your money and buy something from a real company. This feels like a rich kid's hobby project. A rich kid's hobby project." The words were so close to Marcus's own sneering dismissal, "Your little hobbies," that I felt a physical shock, as if he had reached through the screen and slapped me. I wanted to defend myself, to write back and explain the hours of labor, the quality of the materials, the ones that weren't warped, the soul we poured into every piece. But I knew it was pointless. The anonymous cruelty of the internet was a beast you couldn't reason with. For the first time, deep, corrosive self-doubt began to seep into the cracks of my exhaustion. What if they were right? What if I was just a delusional girl playing business, destined to fail spectacularly? I could almost hear the pitying conversations around the mahogany table at the Vance estate. I hadn't spoken to my family since the day I quit. My mother had tried a few times, sending texts filled with a desperate, uncomprehending cheerfulness. "Hope you're well, darling. We miss you at dinner. Let us know if you need anything for your little art project. XO Mom." The phrase "little art project" was a dagger. It proved they hadn't listened, hadn't understood, and still saw my life's work as a childish diversion. I pictured them on Sundays, my father carving the roast, Marcus pontificating about the market, and my mother mentioning my absence with a sigh, all of them secure in the belief that my failure was inevitable, a foregone conclusion that would eventually restore the proper family order. Their obliviousness was, in its own way, more painful than open hostility. It was a complete erasure. One particularly bleak Tuesday, after discovering a flaw in a batch of varnish that set our production back by 3 days, I found myself sitting on an upturned crate in the workshop, my head in my hands. The bank account was dangerously low. We had 3 outstanding orders to fill, and I wasn't sure I could even afford the shipping costs. The weight of it all was crushing me. Leo, who had been silently sanding a table leg, stopped his work. The sudden quiet made me look up. He was watching me, his expression unreadable. "It is hard," he said, his voice a low rumble. It wasn't a question. I let out a shaky breath, a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "Hard doesn't even begin to cover it, Leo. I think they might have been right. Maybe I can't do this." Leo put down his sanding block and walked over, wiping his hands on his apron. He looked around the small workshop, at the stacks of wood, the tools hanging in their neat rows, the finished pieces waiting for shipment, glowing under the fluorescent lights. "When I was a young man in the old country," he began, his voice taking on a distant, storytelling quality, "my father taught me to work with wood. He said the first lesson is this: wood has memory. If you try to force it, to bend it against its nature, it will always fight you. It will crack, it will warp. But if you listen to it, if you understand its grain, its strength, its spirit, you can create something that will last for 1,000 years. He looked down at me, his clear blue eyes piercing. "This place. This work. It has a good spirit, Alara. A true grain. It is not the work that is fighting you. It is the world. The world does not like new things. It is easier to be an old, dying tree than a new seed. But the seed is where the life is." He tapped his chest with a thick finger. "You have to trust the spirit of the work. The rest is just noise." His words, simple and profound, cut through the fog of my despair. He was right. I had been listening to the noise, to Marcus's echo, to the anonymous reviewer, to the dwindling bank account. I had forgotten to listen to the work itself, to the truth of what we were creating. I straightened my shoulders, took a deep, sawdust-scented breath, and nodded. "Okay, Leo," I said, my voice stronger. "Okay. What do we do about this varnish?" His words didn't magically solve our problems, but they shifted my perspective. The fight wasn't over. I had one last idea, a desperate, long-shot gamble that I had been too afraid to try. There was an interior design influencer, a woman named Jules Devereaux, who ran a massively popular blog and Instagram account called The Curated Space. She was a kingmaker in the design world, known for her impeccable minimalist taste and her focus on authentic, sustainable craftsmanship. Getting featured by her could change everything. It was also next to impossible. She was inundated with products from companies 1,000 times our size. I decided to bet everything on a single roll of the dice. I couldn't just send her an email, it would be deleted in a second. I had to send her something she couldn't ignore. I chose the side table, the very first piece Leo had built, the prototype that had made Aura Designs real. It felt symbolic. It was our genesis. Leo and I spent a full day meticulously checking every joint, sanding and oiling it until the reclaimed oak seemed to glow from within. I packed it myself, using eco-friendly wool insulation and a custom-built crate, ensuring it would arrive in perfect condition. Tucked inside, I placed a simple, handwritten note on thick, cream-colored cardstock. "Ms. Devereaux, My name is Alara Vance, and I am the founder of Aura Designs. I believe that furniture should have a soul. This piece was made from the reclaimed wood of a 100-year-old barn, and it was crafted by hand by a master artisan who believes in his work. We are a small company trying to build something honest and beautiful in a world of mass production. I know how busy you are, but I hope this piece might speak for itself. Thank you for your time. Sincerely, Alara. The cost of shipping the crate was astronomical. It was money I didn't have, money that should have gone to rent or utilities. As I watched the courier load the heavy box onto his truck, I felt a wave of nausea. This was it. I had thrown my Hail Mary. Now, all I could do was wait. A week passed. Then another. Nothing. The silence was deafening. I tried to put it out of my mind, focusing on the daily grind, but the hope I had foolishly allowed to bloom was beginning to wither. The gamble hadn't paid off. We were back to square one, only poorer. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, it happened. I was on my laptop, trying to figure out a cheaper way to source packing materials, when my phone buzzed. It was an Instagram notification. At Decorated Space tagged you in a post. My breath caught in my throat. My fingers were trembling so badly I could barely unlock the phone. I opened the app. And there it was. It was a photograph, but it was more than that, it was a work of art. Jules Devereux had styled the side table in a sun-drenched corner of her immaculate home. A single stem of eucalyptus stood in a ceramic vase on its surface, and a stack of art books lay beside it. The light caught the grain of the wood, making it look like spun gold. It was our table, but seen through her eyes, it was transformed into an object of pure desire. And then I read the caption. I rarely do this, it began, but today I need to introduce you to Aura Designs, at Aura Designs Official. I receive hundreds of products a week. Most are soulless. This little table, however, this table has a soul. It arrived in a crate with a quiet, handwritten note and craftsmanship that took my breath away. This is what design should be about: sustainability, story, and a deep respect for the materials. This is not an ad. This is a public service announcement. This is the future. I am obsessed. I read the words once, twice, 10 times. My vision blurred with tears. This table has a soul. She had heard it. She had understood. I was still staring at the post, watching the number of likes tick upward at an alarming rate, 1,000, then 5, then 10, when a new sound filled my apartment. It was a sound I had only heard a handful of times before. A cheerful, electronic cha-ching. The sales notification from my website. Before I could even process it, it came again. Cha-ching. And again. Cha-ching. 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 It was a cascade, an avalanche. I clicked over to the website's dashboard. The real-time visitor count, which usually hovered between 3 and 5, was now at 400. Then 1,000. Then 5,000. The orders were pouring in, a relentless, beautiful flood. They were buying the side table. They were buying the shelving unit. They were pre-ordering the pendant light we hadn't even fully prototyped yet. I stumbled out of my chair and ran for the workshop, which was just a short drive from my apartment. I burst through the door, my phone clutched in my hand. Leo was at his workbench, methodically sharpening a chisel. He looked up, his expression mildly alarmed by my wild-eyed entrance. Leo! I gasped, holding out the phone. Look. Just look. He took the phone, his brow furrowed as he squinted at the screen. He read the post slowly, then swiped to our website, his eyes widening at the stream of orders coming in. The cha-ching sound kept ringing out from my phone speaker, a soundtrack to our sudden, shocking reversal of fortune. He looked up from the phone, then at me. His stoic facade cracked, and a slow, wide grin spread across his face, a magnificent sight. He let out a booming laugh, a sound of pure, unadulterated joy that seemed to shake the very foundations of the workshop. So, he said, his eyes twinkling. It seems the world is finally ready for some new seeds. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of controlled chaos. We were completely, gloriously, overwhelmed. We sold out of our entire inventory in 48 hours. We had a backlog of orders that would take us months to fill. My email inbox, once a desolate wasteland, was now flooded with inquiries from customers, design blogs, and even small boutique stores wanting to carry our line. We had to hire a small team, and fast. Anya, my friend from the tech world, took a week off from her job to fly in and help me set up a more robust e-commerce backend and a system for managing the deluge. We hired Maya, a young, energetic art student, to manage packing and shipping. She had an infectious enthusiasm and an organizational prowess that was a godsend. We hired Ben, a quiet, hyper-competent web developer, to handle the website and customer service. Suddenly, our little two-person operation had a payroll. It was terrifying and exhilarating. Aura Designs wasn't just an idea anymore, it was a team, a brand, a movement. The grind was still there, harder than ever, but now it was buoyed by purpose and the incredible validation of success. Meanwhile, in a glass-walled boardroom 20 miles away, Marcus Vance was having a very bad day. He stabbed at a button on his speakerphone, cutting off the whining voice of a regional sales manager. "Just fix it," he snapped, ending the call. He leaned back in his leather chair, the Eames knockoff a pale imitation of the real thing, a perfect metaphor for the current state of Vance Sons. The third quarter numbers were in, and they were abysmal. Stagnant. Their newest line, a clumsy attempt to appeal to a younger market that Marcus had personally overseen, was a complete flop. One of their oldest and most loyal clients, a high-end hotel chain, had just informed them they were putting their next big contract out to tender, a clear vote of no confidence. He was under pressure from the board, from his father, from the weight of a legacy that felt less like a throne and more like a millstone around his neck. He loosened his tie, his jaw tight with frustration. His office door opened and his assistant, a nervous young man named Peterson, peeked in. "Mr. Vance? Mr. Albright from the Sinclair Group is on the line for you," Marcus sighed. Albright was a potential new client, the head of a fast-growing tech firm looking to furnish their new corporate campus. It was a massive, prestigious contract they couldn't afford to lose. "Put him through." "Marcus, my boy, how are you?" Albright's voice boomed through the speaker. "Jonathan, good to hear from you. We're just finalizing the initial design proposals for your campus. I think you'll be very pleased." "Excellent, excellent. Say, I wanted to pick your brain. My wife is redecorating our place, you know how it is. She's absolutely obsessed with this hot new online brand. Have you heard of them? Aura Designs." Marcus froze. The name meant nothing to him. "Can't say that I have," he said, forcing a casual tone. "Another one of these internet pop-ups, I imagine. Here today, gone tomorrow." "I don't know, Marcus," Albright said, a new excitement in his voice. "This feels different. The craftsmanship, the story, it's all about sustainability, reclaimed materials." "Very now. They're all over the design blogs. You should check them out. Might give you some ideas for our project. Anyway, send over those proposals when you have them. Cheers." The line clicked dead. Marcus stared at the phone. Aura Designs. The name was irritatingly elegant. He dismissed it. Albright was a tech guy, prone to fads. Still, the phrase "all over the design blogs" stuck with him. Later that afternoon, a digital subscription to Design Digest, the industry's leading publication, landed in his inbox. He usually deleted it without reading, but today, driven by a flicker of annoyance, he opened it. The headline on the cover story made his stomach clench. "The Aura of Success, How a Newcomer is Redefining American Furniture." Beneath the headline was a stunning photograph of a minimalist shelving unit, its clever, tool-less joinery displayed prominently. It was elegant, innovative, and achingly beautiful. And it was familiar. The clean aesthetic, the focus on the joinery, it felt like a ghost of an idea he had heard before. A faint, nagging echo. He scrolled down, his unease growing. The article praised Aura Designs for its visionary approach, its commitment to sustainability, and its brilliant marriage of form and function. It mentioned they had just won the publication's coveted Best Newcomer award. He kept scrolling, his finger moving faster. And then he saw it. An interview with the founder. There was a photo, a professional headshot of a woman with dark hair pulled back, a small, confident smile on her face, standing in a sunlit workshop. He stopped breathing. It was Alara. His Alara. his quiet, artistic, inconsequential little sister. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. He read her name, Ilara Vance, founder and CEO of Aura Designs. He scanned the article, his mind struggling to process the words. It talked about her background, mentioning only that she came from a traditional furniture family but had a passion for modern, sustainable design that led her to forge her own path. It was a polite, professional middle finger. He scrambled to open his web browser, his hands shaking slightly. He typed in Aura Designs. The website loaded instantly. It was sleek, beautiful, and intuitive. Everything their own clunky, outdated website was not. He clicked on our story. There was the same photo of Ilara, looking poised and successful. He clicked on shop. There it was. The entire collection. The modular sofa. The bamboo pendant lights. The shelving unit. The side table. He recognized them all. They were the designs from her portfolio. The portfolio he had laughed at. The one his father had dismissed as a flat-pack fad. It was the Ether line. She had even kept the name. The realization hit him not as a thought, but as a physical blow. The air rushed from his lungs. It wasn't a little hobby. It wasn't an art project. It was a real company. A successful, celebrated, award-winning company. And it was built on the very foundation he had told her was worthless. He hadn't just underestimated her. He had been a fool. An arrogant, blind fool. He had mocked her ideas, and she had taken them and built a kingdom while he was busy polishing the bars of his own gilded cage. "You'll never succeed without us." His own words came back to him, no longer a statement of fact but a monument to his own spectacular misjudgment. She hadn't needed them. She had needed to be free of them. With a sense of dread, he pulled up the Vance Sun's quarterly sales report on one side of his screen and left the vibrant, thriving Aura Designs website on the other. The contrast was stark and brutal. One was a picture of stagnation, of a slow, inexorable decline. The other was a picture of the future. A future his sister was building. A future she was stealing from him. He grabbed his phone, his thumb jabbing at the screen to find his father's number. His mind was a maelstrom of rage, panic, and a feeling he hadn't experienced since he was a small boy, fear. His father answered on the second ring. "Marcus. Any news on the Sinclair contract?" Marcus stared at the picture of his smiling sister on the screen, the architect of his impending doom. His voice was tight, barely a whisper. "Dad," he said, "we have a problem. It's Ilara. A year is a lifetime in the world of startups, and a death sentence in the world of complacent empires. 18 months after Jules Devereaux's Instagram post had changed everything, Aura Designs was no longer a nascent seed, it was a flourishing tree, its roots digging deep into the industry soil, its branches reaching for the sun. The frantic, caffeine-fueled chaos of our initial success had settled into a humming, productive rhythm. We had moved out of the cramped, dusty garage and into a sprawling, light-filled warehouse in a revitalized industrial district. The space was a living embodiment of the brand, open plan, with exposed brick walls, ceilings crisscrossed with old timber beams, and massive windows that flooded the workshop with natural light. One half of the building was the workshop, a state-of-the-art facility where Leo, now our head of production, presided over a team of 6 young, passionate artisans he was training in his meticulous methods. The other half was our office and showroom, a minimalist space where our small, dedicated team worked amidst prototypes and finished pieces of our own design. We were no longer just a website, we were a presence. Our Ether line had been featured in a multi-page spread in Architectural Digest. I had been named one of Forbes' 30 Under 30 in art style, a bizarre and dizzying honor that resulted in a flurry of interviews where I carefully honed my origin story into a palatable narrative of a young designer forging her own path. I never mentioned my family by name. I didn't have to. The quiet dignity of my success was a far more eloquent statement than any public airing of grievances. I had become a rising star, a name synonymous with innovation, sustainability, and a new, more thoughtful approach to American design. The irony was so thick I could taste it. In stark contrast, the House of Vance was crumbling. Their decline was not a sudden, spectacular collapse, but a slow, creeping decay, like rot in an old foundation. Their failure to adapt had become a terminal diagnosis. They had lost the Sinclair Group contract, a brutal blow that had sent shockwaves through their finances. Their attempt to compete with us had been a pathetic and transparent failure. 6 months after Aura's ascent, they had rushed out a new line called Vance Modern. It was a grotesque caricature of contemporary design, all the clean lines and minimalist aesthetics of my work, but stripped of any soul. It was built with cheaper materials, the joinery was clumsy, and the whole collection reeked of a desperate, boardroom-driven attempt to be hip. The market, now educated by authentic brands like mine, saw it for exactly what it was. It flopped, becoming a costly monument to their arrogance and lack of vision. The whispers in the industry grew louder. Vance Sons, once the unassailable titan, was now described with words like stodgy, out of touch, a relic. They were losing long-term contracts, their aging customer base was shrinking without replenishment, and Marcus's aggressive cost-cutting measures had resulted in a noticeable decline in quality, tarnishing the one asset they had left, their reputation. I took no joy in their failure. My mission had never been to destroy them, but to liberate myself. Their self-destruction was merely a byproduct of the same sickness that had driven me away, an allergy to change, a worship of the past so blind it prevented them from seeing the future. The ultimate battleground was announced on a crisp autumn afternoon. Omnicorp, a global tech behemoth, was building a new, state-of-the-art North American headquarters. They called it the Elysian Campus, and it was the most ambitious architectural project of the decade. The contract to furnish the entire campus, offices, collaboration spaces, cafes, executive suites, was the kind of deal that could define a company for a generation. It was a kingmaker, a seal of approval from the most forward-thinking corporation in the world. When the shortlist of firms invited to submit a final pitch was made public, 2 names on the list caused a collective gasp in the design world. Vance Sons Fine Furnishings. Aura Designs. The juxtaposition was breathtaking. The dying king and the young pretender, summoned to the same court for a final, decisive judgment. My inclusion was a testament to how far we had come. Theirs, I suspected, was a courtesy, a nod to their history before they were put out to pasture. But I knew better than to underestimate their pride. They would see this not just as a contract, but as a chance to reassert their dominance, to crush the upstart rebellion led by their own blood. For them, this was war. For me, it was just the final exam. The day of the presentation, I felt a strange and profound calm. I wore a simple, beautifully tailored charcoal gray suit, my hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. I was flanked by Leo, who looked surprisingly distinguished in a new tweed jacket, and Anya, who had officially joined us 6 months prior as our chief operating officer. We were a united front, a small but formidable team. As we walked into the gleaming, cathedral-like lobby of Omnicorp's current headquarters, I saw them. My father and Marcus were standing near the reception desk, looking stiff and out of place in their dark, funereal suits. My father had aged. The lines on his face were deeper, etched with a worry I had never seen there before. Marcus, however, vibrated with a tense, belligerent energy. He had lost the easy, smug confidence of the heir apparent. It had been replaced by the brittle arrogance of a king whose throne was wobbling. Our eyes met across the polished marble floor. For a moment, the world seemed to slow down. I saw a flicker of something in my father's eyes. Was it regret? Surprise? Then it was gone, replaced by the familiar mask of stern disapproval. Marcus's expression was pure, unadulterated venom. He looked at me as if I were a traitor, a snake he had unwittingly nurtured in his own home. A polished Omnicorp executive appeared to lead them into the boardroom. Mr. Vance, she said with a professional smile. We're ready for you. As they walked past, Marcus deliberately brushed my shoulder, a petty, physical assertion of dominance. I didn't flinch. I just stood my ground, my gaze steady. We had an hour to wait. We sat in a designated lounge area, the silence between the 3 of us comfortable and focused. Anya ran through the key metrics in our proposal one last time. Leo quietly studied the grain on the walnut coffee table in front of us, his expression one of faint disgust. I just breathed, centering myself, pushing away the ghosts of family dinners and condescending laughter. This wasn't about them. This was about the work. Finally, the executive returned. Ms. Vance? We're ready for you now. The boardroom was a theater of corporate power. A massive, single-slab obsidian table dominated the space, surrounded by 20 chairs. At the head of the table sat a panel of 5 executives, including Omnicorp's legendary CEO, a woman named Lena Petrova, known for her visionary intellect and notoriously low tolerance for bullshit. The air was cool and smelled of expensive, recycled air. My father and Marcus were nowhere to be seen. They must have been escorted out through a separate exit. A small mercy. We took our places. The presentation was projected onto a screen that took up an entire wall. I began to speak. My voice was clear and steady. I didn't start with financials or product specs. I started with a story. The modern workspace is no longer just a place to work, I began, my eyes meeting Lena Petrova's. It's a place to connect, to create, to innovate. It should be an ecosystem, not a factory. The furniture within that ecosystem shouldn't be a static, passive element. It should be an active participant. It should be adaptable, intuitive, and sustainable. It should tell the same story that your company tells, a story about the future. For the next 40 minutes, I walked them through the world of Aura Designs. I didn't just show them furniture, I showed them a philosophy. Our designs for the collaborative spaces featured modular sofas that could be reconfigured in minutes, whiteboards integrated into beautiful wooden partitions, and standing desks that adjusted with a silent, intuitive touch. For the private offices, we had designed pieces with integrated smart technology, wireless charging surfaces built invisibly into desktops, lighting that synced with the user's circadian rhythm. For the cafes, we used a new, durable material made from recycled plastics and coffee grounds, a tangible commitment to the circular economy. I talked about our commitment to American craftsmanship, and then I turned the floor over to Leo. He spoke for only 5 minutes, but his words carried the weight of a lifetime of experience. He didn't use corporate jargon. He spoke of the life in the wood, the integrity of a hand-cut dovetail joint, the difference between a piece built to last and a piece built to be replaced. He held up 2 pieces of wood, one a cheap, veneered particle board, the other a solid piece of reclaimed oak from our workshop. One of these has a story, he said simply, holding up the oak. The other is just an excuse. The executives were captivated. We ended with a simple, powerful slide, a picture of our diverse, smiling team standing in our sunlit workshop. At Aura Designs, I concluded, we aren't just building furniture. We're building a new legacy. One based not on where we've been, but on where we are going. Thank you. Silence. The 5 executives looked at each other. Lena Petrova leaned forward, her elbows on the obsidian table. She had an intense, unblinking gaze. Ms. Vance, she said, her voice sharp and precise. Your family's company also presented to us today. They spoke a great deal about their legacy. 100 years of tradition. Why should we bet on a company that's barely 2 years old over one that has stood for a century? This was the question. The one I had been preparing for. I took a breath. Ms. Petrova, legacy and tradition are 2 different things. Tradition is worshipping the ashes. Legacy is passing on the fire. For 100 years, the fire of my family's company was innovation and craftsmanship. But somewhere along the way, they started worshipping the ashes. They became a museum. At Aura Designs, we've taken that fire, and we're building a beacon with it. A slow smile spread across Lena Petrova's face. Well said, Ms. Vance. Thank you for your time. We'll be in touch. We packed up our equipment, the adrenaline slowly beginning to recede. As we walked out of the boardroom and back into the main lobby, my composure finally cracked. Anya grabbed my arm and squeezed it, her eyes shining with pride. You killed it, Alara. Absolutely killed it. That was, I started, my voice trembling slightly. That was terrifying. That was magnificent, Leo rumbled, clapping me gently on the shoulder with a hand the size of a dinner plate. And then I saw them. They hadn't left. They had been waiting. My father and Marcus were standing by the glass entryway, positioned like sentinels, blocking my path to the exit. The confrontation I had been avoiding for nearly 2 years was finally here. As I approached, Marcus stepped forward, his face a mask of incandescent rage. What was that? He hissed, his voice low and shaking with fury. Our legacy? Worshipping the ashes? How dare you? How dare you stand in that room and desecrate our family's name? I told the truth, I said, my voice quiet but firm. Anya and Leo stood just behind me, a silent, supportive wall. The truth, he spat, taking another step closer. You stole our ideas. You used the training our company gave you, the name we gave you, and you twisted it into this trendy little sideshow to stab us in the back. This was the accusation I had always known would come. The one that was so fundamentally wrong it was almost laughable. You didn't give me ideas, Marcus, I said, my calm voice a stark contrast to his barely contained hysteria. You threw them away. I just picked them up out of the trash where you left them. As for my training, I went to one of the best design schools in the country. The only thing I learned at Vance Sons was how not to run a business. And I dropped the Vance name from my company for a reason. I wanted it to stand for something new. You are ungrateful, my father's voice boomed, startling me. He had been silent until now, a looming, thunderous presence. He stepped forward, his face flushed, his eyes filled with a deep, profound hurt that was almost more painful to see than his anger. After everything we gave you? A home, an education, a job? This is how you repay us? By trying to destroy your own family? The word family hung in the air. For a moment, the 15-year-old girl inside me, the one who had just wanted her father's approval, felt a sharp, brutal pang of guilt. Then, the woman I had become took over. I looked him straight in the eye, the years of hurt, of being dismissed, of being overlooked, crystallizing into a single moment of perfect, cold clarity. The mask was gone. You gave me a job, but you never gave me a voice, I said, my voice shaking just a little now, not with fear, but with the raw power of a truth finally spoken. You gave me a salary, but you never gave me respect. You talk about family, but family doesn't tell their own daughter, their own sister, that she will never succeed. Family doesn't clip your wings and then get angry when you learn to build your own plane. I took a deep breath, the final words coming out with a calm finality. I didn't build Aura Designs to destroy you. That was never the point. I built it to prove you wrong. And I did. I didn't succeed because of you. I succeeded in spite of you. I held their gaze for a moment longer, letting the words sink in. My father looked as if I had physically struck him. He seemed to shrink, the blustering anger draining away, leaving behind a confused, wounded old man. Marcus just stared, his mouth opening and closing silently, utterly defeated by a truth he could not argue against. There was nothing more to say. The reckoning was complete. Without another word, I turned and walked past them, Anya and Leo falling into step beside me. We pushed through the glass doors and into the bright, clean air of the city, leaving them behind in the shadow of the corporate tower. A week later, I was in the workshop, my sleeves rolled up, helping Maya pack a shipment of our new lounge chairs. My phone buzzed in my pocket. The caller ID read Omnicorp. My heart stopped. My hands went numb. Maya saw the look on my face. Is that? I nodded, unable to speak. I walked to a quiet corner of the workshop and answered, my voice a half-strangled whisper. Hello, Ilara Vance speaking. Ms. Vance, this is Lena Petrova. The CEO's voice was crisp and unmistakable. I'm calling to personally congratulate you. The board was unanimous. We would be honored for Aura Designs to furnish the Elysian campus. The contract is yours. I sank down onto a nearby stool, the world dissolving into a bright, buzzing haze. I don't remember what I said. I think I just stammered my thanks over and over. When I hung up, the entire workshop was silent, watching me. I looked at Leo, at Anya, at Maya and the rest of our small, incredible team. I took a deep breath and then, I smiled. A real, joyful, unburdened smile. We got it, I said. The room erupted in a roar of cheers and applause. The final scene of the play did not come for another 2 months. It was late on a Tuesday night. I was working at my desk, a beautiful, minimalist piece from our ether line that I had assembled myself. The lights of the city twinkled through the large warehouse window, a galaxy of possibilities. The rest of the team had gone home. The only sound was the soft hum of my laptop. There was a soft knock on the main office door. I frowned. We weren't expecting anyone. I walked over and peered through the security peephole. My blood ran cold. It was Marcus. He was alone. He looked diminished. The expensive suit was rumpled, his shoulders were slumped, and the defiant anger in his eyes was gone, replaced by a hollow, desperate exhaustion. I hesitated for a long moment, my hand on the lock. Then, with a deep sigh, I opened the door. He didn't meet my eyes at first. He just looked past me into the showroom, at the warm, inviting space filled with the beautiful, successful fruits of my labor. "Elara," he said, his voice raspy. "Marcus. What are you doing here?" My voice was not unkind, merely neutral. I saw the news. About Omnicorp. Congratulations." The words sounded like they were being dragged from him over broken glass. "Thank you." He finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes was not the brother who had tormented me, but a defeated stranger. "It's bad, Elara. It's really bad. Losing Omnicorp was the final straw. Our credit lines are being pulled. We're going to have to declare bankruptcy within the month." I said nothing. I just listened. "The board is forcing Dad into retirement," he continued, his voice cracking. "They're blaming him. Blaming me. Everything our great-grandfather built, it's just going to be gone." He looked around my showroom again, a desperate, calculating light entering his eyes. "But it doesn't have to be." I knew what was coming. "A merger," he said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "Or an acquisition. Or I could acquire Vance Sons. We still have the workshops, the machinery, the name recognition. You could absorb our assets, rebrand everything under the Aura name. You could save the Vance legacy. You could save us." He looked at me, his eyes pleading. It was the ultimate, pathetic reversal. The man who had told me I was nothing without them was now begging me to save them, to let them become a part of my success. He was offering me the keys to the kingdom he had tried so hard to keep me out of. He thought, even now, that I would want it. That my goal all along had been to sit on their throne. I listened patiently, my expression unreadable. When he was finished, the silence stretched out between us. I walked over to the large window and looked out at the city, at the endless, glittering lights. My city. I thought about the dark, suffocating dining room. I thought about the sting of his laughter. I thought about the cold, lonely nights fueled by coffee and rage. I thought about Leo's faith, Anya's brilliance, and the pride I felt every single time I saw a customer fall in love with a piece we had made. I had built my own world. I didn't need to conquer his. I turned back to him. My face was not triumphant, or smug, or angry. It was peaceful. Free. "Thank you for the offer, Marcus," I said softly, my voice filled with a quiet, indisputable finality. "But Aura Designs isn't for sale. And I'm not interested in saving the company that never thought I was worth saving." I walked to the door and held it open for him. The message was clear. It was time for him to leave. He stared at me for a long moment, the last flicker of hope dying in his eyes. He finally understood. This was never about him. It was about me. He walked out without another word. I closed the door behind him, the soft click of the lock echoing in the quiet space. The ultimate revenge wasn't a fiery explosion. It wasn't seeing him grovel. It was this. The quiet, unshakable peace of my own success. The complete and total independence I had fought for and won. I had not only proven him wrong. I had made his opinion, his validation, his entire world, utterly and completely irrelevant. I had truly succeeded without them.